with the 100,000 you used to buy like groceries for a week. Now you just buy, diapers and milk.
When God really visit the Muslim world, that we as ministers, as a church, as a global church, are prepared to help them to grow in their faith.
In your mercy, hear our prayers, because these people are your people, and we are just your hands and feet.
And welcome back to the MENA Collective podcast. Now, today I've got my friend Nuna from Triumphant Ministries Lebanon, and she's here to share with us about what they're doing in the wake of the COVID crisis. Nuna, welcome. So glad to have the MENA Collective podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
So for those who may not be familiar, fill us in and tell us about your ministry and the areas that you're serving and reaching.
So I don't want to go back too far in the past, but we started in 2006, and since then we have been working with people who have been displaced inside Lebanon, and then we worked with refugees for the last 7-8 years. We've been working with refugees coming from Syria. We worked with basic assistance, and we moved into working with education and vocational training and all the psychosocial trauma healing, all these things that are very important for refugees, and especially people with trauma or who have lived a traumatic experience. So we've been working for the last 8 years, maybe, or around 8 years, in camps, in Syrian refugee camps, but also in Beirut, where we have community centers. And we have people all the time, like the whole day. We have people coming in and out of the community centers.
Now, for those of our listeners who are listening from the United States or from elsewhere in North America or Europe, they may not be familiar with the very unique dynamic history and struggle of the relationship between Lebanon and Syria. And it's amazing for those of us who do know the dynamic to see ministries like yours, who are Lebanese people who are loving these Syrians. Can you explain a little bit about really why that is such an amazing thing, and kind of the history, kind of briefly, about why this is such a vital example of really being the hands and feet of Jesus to our neighbors?
Yeah, this is a long story, because the Syrian occupied Lebanon for a long time. And for almost 15 years, they were occupying Lebanon, and maybe even more. And many people died under their regime. So even personally, I had a story of my father dying during the war, during the civil war in Lebanon, and Syria was involved in that war. So the resentment against Syrians is really present in Lebanon, even now, with everyone around us. So I have all the time people just telling me, why are you working with Syrians? Why are you helping the refugees? Why are you giving them anything? Why you have Lebanese poor? Why are you doing this with refugees? So this is a something that has been in the history of Lebanon, and the resentment is still strong even today. Because it wasn't only a military presence, it was a political presence. It was an economic presence. So the dominance of Syrians in Lebanon, taking people to prison, torturing, all these things, we lived them during the war. So we know exactly what that is. So when this struggle, when this war started inside Syria, this rebellion, this is the spring, the Syria spring, whatever you call it, inside Syria, when it started and people started to come to Lebanon, I didn't want to do anything with them. Maybe for a whole year, I didn't want to have anything to do with them. Yeah. And I was hearing on the news about people in the camps, and about things that they've been going through, and that about the massacres that are happening and all these things. And inside me, I have to say that I was saying they deserve it. They deserve it. They brought it upon themselves. What they have brought into Lebanon, now they're living in their own country. And this is how many people in Lebanon view them now. Many people in Lebanon would just say, they deserve what they're getting. This is because of what they did to Lebanon for 20 years. I don't know how many years. This is because of it. So for me to just move from that place of like, I don't want to have anything to do with that, and then moving into a place of starting to serve them was a whole shift.
Yeah.
And it was just because the Lord said so. So one day it was very clear that the Lord just said, what are you going to do about that? And
Wow.
I was like, okay, I don't want to do anything about that. This is not my problem. You have the UN, that they can do the work. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But I just, when you feel the Lord is pushing you to do something, and you just move, not with a compassion, but with obedience.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a whole shift. That creates a space for God to just work inside your heart, because you're obeying what he says. And then you start to have a heart. You don't have the heart before. So I didn't have the heart before, but then when I moved by obedience and just moved and to see what's out there. One day we went in the car, we just went 4 ladies, just going in the car, not knowing where the refugees were, not knowing what to see, what to expect, and just rolling down our windows and asking people, where are the refugees? Because we had no clue. And I think that day when we started to visit, people who were taking us from home to home, just, okay, well, I have my cousin here, and then this cousin have a friend here, and then moving from home to home, and then getting to a camp and seeing kids. It was winter. So to seeing kids with no shoes, sleeping in mud, like a place that would be really not fit for a cow to live in, like for cattle to live in.
Yeah.
And this really touched me, and I just said, these people had nothing to do with the war that was in Lebanon. This is the political, this is the army, these are not the people. So the people are just victims, as much victims as I was victim. So I saw them as people and not anymore as a people group. And that made a whole change, because when you see people as just a people group, you put all your preconceived ideas on the people, then you don't have much room to just see an individual.
Yeah.
When I saw an individual, it just changed my heart. And this is where I actually started to work with them.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. It's, we can't imagine the scope and scale, particularly those of us in the West, but we're talking, Lebanon is a country, of what now, 30%, maybe more refugees?
Yes, 30%, yeah, at least.
At least that are registered. Yeah.
Yes, but because you have also the Palestinian refugees, so you have a lot of refugees from Iraq, from Palestinians and Syrians, so these are a lot of refugees inside a very tiny country.
So it's understandable that obviously providing resources for all of these refugees was putting a strain naturally on churches and ministries and the government in Lebanon. And that was just the situation before the economic and political turbulence that Lebanon had in the fall. And now we're adding COVID. So how has COVID and the coronavirus actually affected your ministry and your ability to minister?
Well, when COVID-19 hit Lebanon, we already had this recession, this revolution, this government changes, as you said, but all these things were in place, and there was such an inflation that the Lebanese pound is just dropping with a free fall, and COVID-19 hit. So people lost jobs, people lost their salaries were cut in half for those who kept their jobs. Everything closed as everywhere else in the world. But with the economic crisis, it was too much. When you have some countries where, yes, everything is on lockdown and it's hard to just stay in, but at least you have some economical stability. Let's say you don't have enough revenue, but there's a stability in your money value. There's stability. So when you have a free fall with your money value, it just puts people under so much pressure. So this goes for Lebanese, and this goes for Syrian refugees too, because they are day laborers. Most of them are day laborers. So they just work one day, and then they eat. So it's not a monthly salary that they get every month. And these day laborers could not work anymore. Everything closed down. So you can imagine that there was no more anything coming in, no more income, nothing coming into the household. And with a free fall, so those who used to get, let's say, $20, let's say, from the UNHCR per person per month, okay, in the family. Now they're getting that in Lebanese pounds, and the Lebanese pound has such a free fall that they can't actually buy anything with it.
Right.
So what they receive as money, they can't buy anything with it. So it goes for the whole country.
And by free fall, I mean back, I can remember, in the summertime, it was, I think, $1 was 1,400 lira.
It was 1,500. $1 was 1,500. Now the dollar is 4,000.
And how much, just say for like a loaf of bread, how much is that?
It's not a loaf of bread. Well, it was like 2,000 lira. So now it's at least 5.
Wow.
So, the bread is still a little bit covered by the government. So this increase is not as much. But we had a day where all the supermarkets just closed their doors so that they can change all the prices on all the items inside the supermarket, because everything, it was just shifted so much that people really, you go now, you buy for like 100,000 Lebanese pounds, you just buy a diaper and milk. That's it. You don't buy anything. Diaper and milk. You used to buy this for with the 100,000. You used to buy like groceries for a week. Now you just buy diapers and milk. So it's not much. It's not much value. So people who have their money in Lebanese pounds, or those who receive their salaries in Lebanese pounds, cannot make ends meet. It doesn't compute. So this is why even now, this week, we have a new revolution that started. It's called the Hungry People Revolution. Because people are actually today, even now, as I'm talking to you, people are in the streets now, burning tires and just asking for bread, asking for something to eat. They just are on TV just saying, my child, he did not eat for 3 days. This is today.
Now, how much of the frustration of the people of Lebanon is being directed or aimed at the refugees who are in the country?
Now, not so much, not at the moment, because the anger is towards the government and towards the central bank and the dollar, the inflation. So the Syrians don't have anything to do with the inflation rate, but the Syrians are taking the jobs. So before that, it was the jobs that they were taken by the Syrians. So we don't have jobs, so we don't have enough, and they're taking a lot less than a Lebanese person would take, because the Lebanese person needs to pay social security and taxes, etc., where the Syrian doesn't have to. So, and the Syrian got some money help from UNHCR. So many other stuff that were actually hard on Lebanese to deal with Syrians. But with the devaluation of the dollar, of the Lebanese pound compared to the dollar, this is where now all the anger is towards the government and towards the central bank and like all the exchange places. So everything that has related to money. Wow.
Now, out of all of this, it seems like the situation is just continuing to get worse, and certainly a need to pray for Lebanon, pray for stability, pray for the government to normalize and to be stable, which is not something it has been lately. How has the church and how have ministries like yours been able to respond in this time, in this crisis?
Since you're talking about prayer, I would just add one thing. Like you're praying for all these, but praying, loving your neighbor. For me, when you love your neighbor, you see your neighbor suffering, you pray for him to have bread. You pray for your neighbor to have food. I think this is part of loving. And so praying for the economy is actually praying loving your neighbor. When you pray for the economy, you're praying for loving your neighbor. So I just wanted to insert this because you're talking about prayer. But for us, we had to have a whole change. We had to change everything because one, we were working in education and we couldn't continue. We couldn't continue having the kids with us. We couldn't continue with doing the trauma counseling and trauma healing. We couldn't continue doing the vocation training. We couldn't. So there are many things in our ministry that we couldn't continue because of social distancing. No way to do this with social distancing. So what we're doing is mainly now shifting towards feeding the poor and the hungry, because there are so many. I have never seen so many people just coming to ask for food. I've never seen that. And now every day, yesterday we registered maybe 130 families, the day before maybe another 100. Like every day we're registering new families, new people every day. And these are people that were well off. They were working, they have their children in universities. They're not just, people who are on the streets, like those who have nothing. And that, no, these are people who have homes, they have cars, they have, their kids are at university. But now, can you imagine somebody like that just coming to ask for a pack of food? This is a very hard situation for people to just go so low, or go just swallow their pride and just go into the asking for a pack of food, So I've never seen this before.
Are there any stories of hope that have come out of what you're seeing? It seems like it can be easily overwhelming as a hopeless situation.
Yes, it is not hopeless. It is actually a time where we can bring the hope of Christ, because of course, we are believers. So as believers, we share love and hope and God with everything that we do. So with a smile, or with gentle word, or with a prayer, with a food pack, with a presence, with just asking about people, we can actually share Christ. And I think for the time being, so many people have just come to Christ in this moment, in this time, because of COVID-19, because they're stranded at home, because they're just confined in a place where they can't meet. I have to say that even the mosques are silent. So this is like, the mosques are silent. They can't gather in mosques. This is Ramadan now, and they can't gather. They don't have the right to just do like parties and dinner together, so they're confined in their own home. This is a time where actually you have a deeper search inside you of the meaning of life, and the fear of death just puts questions in people's minds. So many people are dying, so many people are getting touched by COVID. We don't know what's happening, so where to turn? All these questions, and when I die, where would I go? So all these questions are now surfacing. They're just coming to the surface, and just people are asking those kind of questions now.
And it's been amazing to see just the openness, and we're hearing reports of this happening all over, where particularly because of Ramadan, the majority populations in some of these countries are asking why would the Hajj be canceled? Why would this happen during the big feasts and festivals of Ramadan? And yet, as Christians, we know that there will be times of difficulty and suffering. It's not, it wasn't perhaps maybe you might be persecuted or experience hardship, but it's when you experience hardship, right? We know that. And so in some ways, I think spiritually we're prepared for this, right? Depending on how we maybe grew up or view the end times or something, but we know things are going to get probably worse before they get better in the end. And yet, people are asking. And so it's amazing to have ministries like yours on the front lines who are able to not just be the hands and feet of Jesus, but also to help bring those encouraging words and to answer those very difficult questions at such a time as this.
Yes,
So,
yes, it is a privilege and it's an honor to actually be able to do this. Like God has entrusted us with something, like with his heart, for people. He's entrusted us with something that's beyond us. And I know that it's not by our own effort. It's not because we are something special, or it's not because of that, because he loves people. So when we say yes, like I told you the story of the beginning, when you just say yes, he starts to just do wonders around you, and without you even doing anything special, but he does the wonder. You're just there, you're just doing the regular thing, and then he does a wonder. And we're experiencing this really, I can say, very frequently.
Amen. Well, Muna, how can we pray for you, and how can we pray for those that you're ministering to?
Well, when you hear story after story of hardships, because as I told you, even yesterday we registered 100 and I don't remember how many families, but each family comes with a story. Yeah. And their story, every story is like father dying, father left, mother with cancer, somebody crippled at home, somebody with, like every story, and then losing everything, losing jobs, so every story is actually putting trauma even on the workers. So when you're tired, at the end of the day, you're just tired of just hearing like negative and oppressive and hard stories. So one of the things that God would just encourage every person that is on the front line, whether they're with us or not, every person that's on the front line working directly with people, those are really in a hard situation. And we call it post, secondary trauma, or something like a term like that. But it's true. It's true that you go and you're so heavy, and the heaviness, even if you're not experience them yourself, you have a trauma yourself, but still you have a secondary trauma. So one thing is that this would be like God would just keep lifting and keep encouraging and keep just breathing on every person that's on the front line. Because if we get tired, what hope can we bring to people? But when we are refreshed and revived, then we can bring hope to people. So first, I think the mental and spiritual atmosphere or well-being of every person that's on the front line. That's the first one. Then pray for that resources will be available, because the need is so great. And I know that God has never left us with no resources. So I am saying that God is always even ahead of us. And sometimes he just starts to do something and we say, why are we doing this? And then God shows us that there was a reason behind it. So he's ahead of us anyway. So we're not going ahead of God. Never. He's always ahead of us. And he's already doing something, and he's already preparing people, and he's already preparing everything that's going to be around us. So just for the resources that we have wisdom, how to use every resource that comes our way, or that God wants to release in the land, that we pray for the economy, because this is part of the loving our neighbors. This is how I said it. I said, loving your neighbor is praying that they might have they can make their own, sustain their own selves. They can make it. This is praying for the economy, that they will be able to sustain themselves, to live with dignity, and not be reduced to a place of begging, a place of need and wants, but a place of sustaining themselves. So that's praying for the economy in Lebanon. And also freedom for the whole country from every international interference. I don't want to go into politics there.
No,
This
but
is not my
understandable.
job. This is not my job, but
Yeah.
I do pray for freedom because of, you know, it's when the situation is linked to political affairs and just trying to just grab, you know, like trying to pull the cords from one side or another, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
You know, it's important for our audience to understand and to know that Lebanon is a country currently that's 1/3 Christian, 1/3, well, really 1/3 Christian, 2/3 Muslim. But of the 2/3 that are Muslim, 1/3 are Sunni and 1/3 are Shiite, and they don't get along very well either. So there's political factions kind of on all front. One of the things that I think is also really important for our folks to understand is that even 20 years ago, Lebanon was almost even a little bit over 50% Christian, and many Christians have left Lebanon.
Yes.
And yet, you know, ministries like yours and even you and your family, you've stayed and you're continuing to stay in the land and to be there. And, you know, it's a lot of times people forget that Christianity has been in Lebanon since the very beginning of the faith. And so for 2,000 years, Lebanon has been home to Christians, and our prayer is that it will continue to do so until Christ comes back.
Amen.
And so that's why supporting ministries like yours is so vitally important.
Yeah, even though the pulling to get to leave the country is really strong, so you have the doors open to emigrate to Canada, emigrate to Australia, emigrate, especially for Christians.
Yep.
It's as if it's open door, just leave the country and leave this whole area. And that this area would be like, this whole area would be totally Muslim, you know, and so there is a agenda behind it. So we don't want to go, we don't want to leave, because we want to be here, as we know that Christ is returning here. No, this is the epicenter of the world, and Christ is returning here, and I want to be on the front line again to just see him returning. So I want to be here.
That's right. Well, if people want to find out more about the ministry of Triumphant Mercy, they can go to tmlebanon.com.
Yes, TM-Lebanon. TM-Lebanon.
Lebanon.com and find out more information. Of course, you can also check the MENA Collective Facebook page and website. We'll be featuring stories from Triumphant Mercy as well as their updates, and you can see their update report on how they're responding to the COVID crisis on our COVID-19 page, which is available at covid19.themenacollective.org. Nuna, thank you so much. We will be praying for Lebanon, praying for you and for the ministry of Triumphant Mercy. God bless you, and thank you for joining us today.
And God bless you for all your work. Bless you.